In the history of the greatest ships ever built, no ship on Earth has ever received the kind of media attention the great Titanic has received. It's been over 100 years since this great tragedy occurred, yet the whole incident is still shrouded in lots of mystery. However, all the mysteries were laid to rest, as an old camera found in the sunk ship revealed a lot of fake truths nobody has ever said out loud before. Well, since you are in great luck, join us as we take you through that path that is less traveled, and we would reach the shocking truth together. Please, before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel. And now that you have, tighten your seatbelt and let us dive right in. 1. Incident. The great and mighty ship that was later known as Titanic did not just magically appear on the sea, ready to be boarded. The construction of this giant vessel started in 1909. It was part of the two giant ships to be constructed by the Wolf Company. The ship indeed was very enormous in size that it took 26 months till it was completed. As the construction and building of the ship took place in Belfast, Ireland, the ship was created to provide an untold luxury to any passenger who was fortunate to board the giant vessel. Being the first ship to have such enormous size, Titanic measured 882 feet in length, accompanied by the breadth of 92 feet 6 inches. However, the ship had a total height of 104 feet, if the measurement took off from the base of the keel all the way to the top of the bridge. With such a massive size, the ship was home to 20 decks. Out of the 10 decks, 8 were for the passengers, while the remaining 2 decks were for the crew and other officers. Thus, considering all these features this great ship was made of then, it is indeed no surprise why the giant ship took 26 months before it was finally completed and ready for sails. This mammoth of a ship took approximately 1,300,000 pounds to be completed then. When this figure is adjusted for inflation, it will stand at a staggering cost of £180 million, according to 2023 economic data. As the huge ship made its maiden voyage towards New York City, it housed several persons, including notable persons and the working class alike. Since the ship was the first of its kind, many people wanted to be part of the ship that indeed made history and boarded the biggest and largest ship of 1910. As the ship took off, it had within it 905 persons aboard as first-class passengers. The number of the second-class passengers stood at 564. Lastly, the third class were made of 134 passengers. However, since the ship could not sail without the aid of crew and members, a staggering 944 passengers were aboard the ship as it took off. However, despite the ship's impressive crew members, tragedy indeed visited on April 14, 1912, and about 2 hours, 40 minutes later on 15th April 1912, the great and almost perfect ship sank. 2. Tell warning signs. While the great Titanic sank within 14th April to 15th April 2024, a lot of experts pointed out to a lot of disturbing anomalies that if the management of the ship has taken note of, perhaps the incident would not have happened. The first pointer was the number of workers that died during the construction phase of the ship. It was reported that in that phase, no fewer than 8 workers lost their previous lives as construction of Titanic was ongoing. It was reported that following the unusual death of those workers, attempts to investigate the reason behind the many deaths were swept under the carpet. It is thus further reported that assuming the causing of the death was fished out and solved promptly, then perhaps over 1,000 persons that lost their lives in one of the most painful incidents in the world would not have. Another pointer many experts believe if it were taken solved, it would have saved a lot of lives, was the incident that happened as the Titanic tried to leave the berth for its voyage. It was reported that as the Titanic was about to leave the berth, it caused a huge wave that drove a nearby ship, SS New York Closer. Thus, if not for the skillful maneuvering of the captains of the both ships, it was reported that there would have been a huge collision. However, as there was no collision, and the captains maneuvered successfully, it caused Edward Smith, captain of the Titanic, to be laid back and not investigate into why the ships nearly collided with one another. The third pointer was the big fire that broke out in the storage room where coals were kept for use. While the cause of the fire outbreak has not been discovered, the fact that the fire burned for 10 days without stopping showed something was truly wrong with the ship. Since the fire incident occurred right before the Titanic took off, It has caused lots of experts to wonder whether the management of Titanic did proper repairs on the areas that were burnt, as there are chances that the ship would have been weakened due to that incident. Upon the later collision of the ship with the iceberg, it was discovered that it was exactly the part of the ship which was burnt that eventually hit the iceberg. This tragic discovery led a lot of experts to wonder whether the ship would have withstood the clash if that part of the ship was not already weakened by the fire incident that lasted for 10 days. As to the formation of the iceberg, which led to the eventual sinking of the ship, it was discovered that the iceberg were remnants of the Jacob Chauvin Glacier, which were formed between 1910, 1911, and which subsequently moved to the place where the accident occurred. The fourth pointer, which made experts pat claim to, was directed at the captain of the ship, Captain Edward John Smith. Captain Edward was a skillful captain, as far the affairs of the sea is concerned, as he had over 30 years' experience before he boarded the ship as its captain. However, as with most great men who out of overconfidence love listening to their own voice, it was reported that Captain Edward received series of warnings before the tragedy. However, Captain Edward must have been so confident in the capabilities of the Titanic that he did not bother himself listening to anyone advising him. On April 12 around 5:46 p.m., SS Lorraine, a French ship, through its radio told the captainage of Titanic of a nearby gigantic iceberg on their route, but this was reportedly ignored by Captain Edward. SS Sleaner, too, on April 13th, instead of warning Titanic's captain of the impending danger, showed the captain her own ship, SS Sleaner, which was already damaged beyond repair, but that, too, did not move Captain Edward of Titanic. It is reported that if only Captain Edward had heeded to all the warnings and perhaps changed his course, then maybe over 1,000 persons would not have lost their lives. The fifth pointer to the whole incident was lifeboats available. It was reported that though lifeboats in the ship were 20 in number, yet only 18 were used. Also, the ones that were used, the crew members refused to fill them to the brim with people. The crew refused filling the lifeboats, as they believed that if the smaller boats were filled, the too much weight on it can even make them to sink faster. This view was greatly criticized, as the crew should have before the incident find out if their fears were true, rather than making assumptions on the day of the incident. Thus, according to one of the survivors of the tragic event, some lifeboats were empty with no persons in it, and in retrospect, if they were all put to use, then definitely more lives would have been saved. Aside the half-empty lifeboats, the crew members that left and got safely inshore refused to return to the ship for fear of their little ship getting drowned by the huge Titanic. However, as logical as that sounded, it was criticized as the crew members could have returned, and within the over 2 hours it took the ship to sink, more lives would have been saved. The sixth strange pointer was that before the Titanic sailed, the crew and management of Titanic SUP refused to put more lifeboats in their ship, despite plenty available space. The reason for the refusal was that the company, White Star Line, felt that too much lifebores will imply that the quality of the ship was not strong. Thus, in the end, in a bid to present a perfect outlook, safety of their passengers was relegated to the background. 3. Captain Edward Smith. As the ship met its tragic end, many experts have raised an important question. Where was the captain during the incident? As is customary, the captain was blamed when the ship took a dive to the bottom of the ship, but nobody could account for the presence of the captain during the incident. While a school of thought credit Captain Edward for being instrumental in saving lives when the ship was particularly sinking, another school of thought argued that Edward fled immediately he saw danger. This latter theory believed that he fled and went to an island where he spent the rest of his life under a new identity. While this has raised a lot of concerns, experts in the end could not agree as to whether Captain Edward died with his ship or if he survived. 4. Finding Titanic. Despite the sinking of the ship in 1912, it was not until 1 September 1985 that an expert by name Robert Ballard was able to identify the ruins of the ship. His discovery was helpful in showing what the vessel looked like and offered a path to many questions troubling lots of people. However, more recently, the MEL A&N team is through the aid of modern technology captured the entire Titanic, which consumed over 16 terabytes. Thus, with this, many experts are hopeful answers to what really transpired in 1912 will be unraveled. Do you think these new technologies can help, or are they merely for formality's sake? Do share your thoughts with us in the comments sections. Well, if you got to the end of the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button, like, share, and turn on the post notification button so you don't miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching.